Today we're going to be talking about VHS Beyond, the 7th entry in the VHS franchise, where I'm surprised that the series isn't called Blu-ray at this point. Much like asbestos dealers in the 1930s, these movies keep on making money, so they're going to continue to be produced despite the increased amount of infant cancers. So join me today as I take a look at 5 different short movies that make absolutely no attempt to explain why they're being filmed on a VHS camcorder and not digital. And as is tradition with the VHS franchise, there's an overarching narrative that ties all of these short movies together, is what I would say if there was an overarching narrative that tied all of these short movies together. Because the thing is, with the combining narrative in VHS Beyond, it doesn't exist. Well, it does exist if you're going to get all pedantic about it, but what I'm saying is it exists for absolutely no reason. There's nothing cohesively explaining why these short movies are randomly playing, like in the older entries. Like spontaneous combustion, they just sort of happen. Abduction Adduction, written and directed by Jay Cheel, is shot as a documentary about a Chinese family that moved to the United States in the 1950s and bought a house. The house being the last known location of their eldest son, before he'd ultimately end up going missing. A Redditor claims that he had bought some VHS tapes from a flea market, a market that specifically caters to fleas, and after digitizing them and sending them over to a filmmaker to create a documentary, they supposedly contain the world's most convincing evidence that aliens do in fact exist. Convincing evidence involving a man deep-throating a piece of electrical equipment. Inheriting the house after his parents died, he ends up putting it on the market for other fellow house enjoyers to buy. But not long after putting it up, the son would start to experience some strange occurrences. Occurrences that he would begin to film using a static camera and a point of view shot. And while sleeping one night, much like that creepy uncle arriving at your bedroom door, the son receives an unwanted visitor. A 4-eyed, stretched out bald white creature that somewhat resembles your average Norwegian. After watching over him for a while as he sleeps, the creature pulls something out of the man, before taking his POV camera and forcing it down his throat so he can have a look inside. Abduction Adduction being the frame narrative that's supposed to tie the 5 other movies together that's interspliced between the beginning and the endings of other movies, but it just gives off the impression that it was supposed to be its own segment and has now been cut up and reworked and placed throughout the movie in a way that doesn't seem to make any sense, coming from me, the king of sense. And speaking of sense, next we have a short film with footage that's far too high definition to be on a movie called VHS, Stalk, written by Jordan Downey and Kevin Stewart, with it being directed by Jordan, the person who brought us the seasonal all-time classic, Thanksgiving. But what I like about Stalk is that it reminds me why I still have love for this franchise. We follow a rookie cop, as he's been tasked with joining the Special Warden police force, armed with nothing but a video camera for scaring the bad guys into thinking they're on an episode of Cops. Recently, there's been a string of baby disappearances due to someone in the neighborhood being extra hungry or something, and the wardens have narrowed down the location to where they think they've been taken to. Interspliced with camera footage and body cam shots from various team members, they set out to their location, with one of the officers actually being a father of one of the missing babies, because that definitely isn't a conflict of interest. They arrive at the location, a building with a strange man wielding a chainsaw outside, and absolutely loving that guy in his role in Resident Evil 4, they kick in the front door in hopes of getting his autograph. And much like Resident Evil 4, suddenly these zombie-like creatures begin appearing out of the woodwork and begin attacking the police in a very non-Blue Lives Matter way. Being sure to keep up their daily quota, in standard police fashion, they begin shooting at absolutely everything that moves in a house that is also full of babies. The cameraman, who just so happens to have walked directly into an incredibly dangerous situation armed with nothing but a slightly bulky and inconvenient camera, is attacked by the chainsaw-wielding zombie and hides because he's afraid of tradesmen. And while hiding, he comes across what appears to be an altar where someone or something has been worshipping a stick creature, bringing back terrifying childhood memories of stick insects. The father of the missing child then brutally deals with the chainsaw guy before running off on his own up the stairs after hearing the sound of a crying baby. The rest of the group find a cracked open meteor that looks like something has come out of it, when suddenly a large man walks in, startling them all on account of them being fat-phobic. They blow out his kneecaps, just how they were taught in police training, but realize that he isn't attacking them. So it's just like their training. Pulling back a bandage on its forehead, they realized that the creature is in fact not a Big Will subscriber because it has no brain. Save your brain, like and subscribe. They hear the sound of a baby crying coming from within the walls, as apparently the insulation guy messed up big time when creating the house. And after pointing the camera through a small gap and looking up, they hear the demonic sound of someone singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star before seeing the final boss of nursery rhymes. Finding that the way is blocked, they go back for the chainsaw, when suddenly all of the creatures get back up. Great. they can respawn. Though, the creatures very soon wish that they hadn't got back up, and are all quickly turned into multiple creatures, thanks to one of the officers and the chainsaw. They manage to cut through the blockage, before turning the corner to see the singing creature holding onto one of the infants, but not liking the way that baby looked, they leave him to it. After ignoring that baby because it's a bit ugly, they head up the stairs further and into the attic to discover that it's full of baby cribs. Someone has a crib selling business. It turns out that this entrepreneur is actually a giant alien Stalk hybrid, helping themselves to a nice refreshing slice of police officer. They watch as Big Bird, but with a fentanyl addiction, regurgitates the officer's remains into the mouths of one of the babies. The babies, who happen to also be alien-human hybrids, or who just have really strong lip genetics. Looking at something foreign that they don't understand, they all proceed to repeatedly fire at it until it stops moving. After they're done letting out their inner American and walking away with the creature dispatched of, it starts to move around again on the floor when suddenly one of the officers run back and American history exit. Now, this would be the part where I go back to the interlinking story that combines each and every one of these short films, but considering there isn't an interlinking story that combines these short films, I won't. You want to know what's more terrifying than extraterrestrial bird babies? India. Written by Virat Pal and Evan Dixon, with Virat directing, the next segment is called Dream Girl, and is about every man's dream woman. One who would violently kill them. Mumbai paparazzi Arnab and Sonu are given the opportunity to get onto the set of a new Bollywood movie starring the up-and-coming actress Tara, and very much respecting this woman's privacy, Arnab sneaks into her trailer and hides in a cupboard as Tara and her manager arrive. The manager proceeds to brighten her spirits by continuously belittling her and telling her that she's easily replaceable. After the manager leaves, Arnab makes the rookie mistake of putting his hand in a bowl containing a human face, and everyone knows that you should never put your hands in another person's face bowl. He accidentally alerts Tara to his presence, but quickly tries to explain it away without her really seeming to care that he's there, before attempting to make her feel better for what the manager said to her. Going from invading this woman's privacy 1 minute for profit, and then trying to make her feel better, he calls her a goddess and tells her that she can do whatever she wants. Something which apparently excites her quite a bit, as after smiling and saying thank you, she begins to peel the skin from her face without so much as buying him a drink first. She says that she'll no longer wear the mask of a slave, and will instead wear his face. That's what being nice to women get to. She then exits the trailer and begins sparking as if she's some kind of malfunctioning robot, which is honestly a bit of an insulting thing to call a woman, before puking acid all over the face of her abusive manager, causing his face to melt off like pulled pork. The crowd begins to run as this lady is having a bit of a moment, but they all end up running back onto set, where they're all locked in, and after powering herself up with an electrical cable, she starts pulling out people's insides because she thinks they'll suit them better all over the floor. After massacring this entire production because someone was a little bit mean to her, she attacks Sonu and forces her fingers into his eyes, giving him 2 cool new pockets to use. And to thank Arnab for her newfound confidence, she tears his arms from their sockets before peeling off his face to wear because sharing is caring. And speaking of sharing, next we have Live and Let Dive by Ben Turner and Justin Martinez, as we follow a group of friends sharing their passion for God as they ascend up into the clouds to try and find him. But the thing about God is, much like those people who play League of Legends, he doesn't want to be seen. A group of people are in a plane celebrating their friend Zach's 30th birthday, and they want to make it an occasion to remember by hurtling from 10,000 feet directly into the ground for a little bit of fun. But while up there, they look out of the window to see a flying saucer in the air, which is the most terrifying thing an American could see. An illegal alien. It disappears for a split second before appearing somewhere else as it appears the server is lagging again, before suddenly it rematerializes directly in front of them, as the aliens thought it would be a fun idea to play chicken with a plane. It turns out that the aliens are really good at it, as the plane breaks into pieces and its occupants are sent flying out, and Zach looks up to see one of his friends falling without a leg because he left it behind somewhere back on the plane. Suddenly, a lanky naked tall creature that isn't me for once flies past them while holding on to one of his friends, while Zach's desperately trying to pull the chute. He eventually manages to deploy it in time as to not instantly kill him, but not fast enough to stop his bones from shattering. Another one of his friends falls from the sky as it's raining men, before suddenly pieces of the plane crash into the ground next to him because these aliens like to litter. Zach's friend Logan has been tied to his back for this entire time, but has been unusually quiet despite him engaging in one of his favorite activities of being tied to another man. Zach looks behind him to realize that Logan has somehow been decapitated and his his head is now tangled in the parachute. Zach, despite hitting the ground at almost the speed of his terminal velocity, is somehow able to get back to his feet and run towards the screams of his friends, despite most of his bones now being in his anus. And after finding them and hearing a scream from his wife, an alien appears and starts to grab them one by one and pulling them off into the trees. Not wanting to see the really cool stick it's found, they try to run, and Zach watches as one of the aliens laser beams his friend's face, causing it to melt off. Running away, he eventually comes across his wife kneeling on the ground, but when he gets over to her, he realizes that she's not just being lazy, but is instead being dead, and her face has been torn off. Running away to let her have a little lie in, he comes across a man in a truck that he rather kindly lets himself into, causing the man to pull out a gun on him, giving an alien the chance to grab him, causing him to fire, and blow Zach's thumb off. While Zach's too busy wondering how he'll ever count to 10 again, an alien gets into the car with him, but despite having no way to thumbs down the creature to show that he's not cool with it, the alien opens his head up and fires a laser beam into him. A laser beam that doesn't melt his face off, unlike his friend, but does nothing more than give him a little tickle. With the alien now nowhere to be seen, suddenly the car begins to lift up from the ground, and he's pulled upwards into the sky before being transported into the alien ship, with the tape then coming to an end. Just don't ask how this tape ever made it back to Earth. But with every ending comes a new beginning, or whatever that ancient Roman philosopher said that one time. Even if that beginning happens to be created by Christian and Justin Long. Justin Long, most notably known for voicing Alvin in the live-action version of Alvin and the Chipmunks. This story involves an animal rights activism group attempting to infiltrate a doggy daycare run by a woman named Becky due to her loving the idea of having her deceased pets stuffed full of foam and placed on the mantelpiece. I prefer to keep mine in the cupboard where no one can see them. Two of the members, Stuart and Angela, go in while using the tried and true method of pretending to not be Stuart and Angela, with Becky almost immediately noticing the camera they're using to secretly record her. She pretends to not notice, after quite literally making it apparently obvious that she's just noticed, and introduces them to her brother Beau, who doesn't talk much since the accident. Maybe I should have an accident. She takes them down into the basement to show off where she trains the dogs, before pulling back a curtain to show a man in a cage, as apparently Becky's into some really weird stuff. Like really weird, as she then has Beau chloroform the pair because it's time for their nap. She decides that it's a pretty good time to start filming her vlog, as she's got Stuart, who she's renamed to Marcus, locked up in a cage. She tells him to stop talking, because talking is only for humans, something which my wife also says to me. Angela has been renamed to Cynthia, as Becky just happens to be a really big fan of Rugrats, and also deforming women. She's sewn a dog jaw into her mouth, and is feeding her doggy treats while making her bark, something that some people on the internet would do willingly. Stuart, or should I say Marcus, is also not exempt from getting a makeover, as she's created a dog paw for him and has attached it directly into his flesh. The rest of the animal rights group, not wanting to miss out on all of this fun, decide to break their way into the home to try and find out what happened to their friends, before making the unfortunate discovery of what happened to their friends. They've been turned into furries. Becky then calls in Gary and Abraham, two other ex-people that she's turned into dog creatures, with a really bad case of the zoomies. Homicidal zoomies. And with that story coming to its end, I'm left thinking that it's kind of funny how Justin Long helped create a story about a bunch of people being forcibly turned into animal-human hybrids, after starring in his own movie about being forcibly turned into an animal-human hybrid. Must be a special interest or something. Created by Kate Siegel and Mike Flanagan, Stowaways, the final short film of the movie, but likely not the final short film of the franchise, because the VHS series is going to outlive us all. The premise of Stowaway follows a woman named Haley, played by Alana Pierce, as she's out in the Mojave Desert trying to find evidence of extraterrestrial life, because if there's one thing that I know about aliens, it's that they love absolutely nothing more than miles upon miles of nothing but sand. She hears from multiple people that there have been reports of strange lights appearing in the sky, so she plans on taking the next few days to camp under some of those locations in hopes of finding someone with a really strong flashlight. And almost immediately, like the strange guy in the changing rooms, the lights reveal themselves, and she gets in her car in the middle of the night and lifts her inner bug and begins chasing after them. After stopping and coming across non-human footprints, she continues to approach the now static light that turns out to just be her light reflecting off something which opens up and lets her inside, as apparently the aliens forgot to lock their car. Entering it, she notices that it appears to be created out of some kind of organic material, as if the ship itself is alive. Now I'm highly sure that that's some form of animal abuse or something, but Haley notices thick pieces of string coming down from the ceiling and decides to touch one of them, resulting in her finger being sliced open. But just like a Diddy party, these strange looking particles begin falling from the sky, but unlike a Diddy party, they begin to heal her wounds as if nothing has happened. Suddenly, something returns to the ship, and being overwhelmed with social anxiety, Hayley hides and watches as a large creature begins touching the strange strings. After a long day of not really doing anything in the desert, the creature enters some sort of hibernation pod, while Hayley notices that the creature has brought back some samples of life on Earth. With the alien now fast asleep, Hayley takes the opportunity to try and leave the ship, but the door appears to have disappeared. Suddenly, the ship begins to move, and in a matter of seconds, they are out of the Earth's orbit, as she can see out of a newly formed window. A newly formed window that sleeping alien is obviously going to take advantage of. But before she has any real time to process what's going on, the ship enters hyperspeed, with the force of it tearing her apart. But the Diddy particles, not one to let the injured go untreated, do their best to keep her alive, while she's continuously damaged by being in an environment that she's clearly not meant to be in. But lacking the DNA profile of a human, she's continuously regenerated with the DNA of various animals, to the point where she has multiple tentacles and spider legs as she begs for it to please stop. And it appears that her begging has actually worked, as the movie then comes to an end. So before this video comes to an end, I'd like to just give a massive shout out and a big thank you to all of the YouTube members and patrons. People who every month continue to go out of their way to help support the channel, something which I greatly appreciate. If you're interested in becoming a YouTube member or a patron yourself, not only are you just generally being a great help, but you also get access to a few little perks, like being able to join the private Discord server, where you can then get links to all uncensored versions of videos going forward. So, starting off with this week's new YouTube signups, a massive thank you to Luak War 312, Tom, Foon, Jesse Holcomb, CeeLo Graham, AA Ron, Kevin Malone, Buffalo Bill, Big Bird, Pedro Manfredante Martindale, Gillette King, Sugant Fandivarian, Lance Besser, Aaron Shea, Garnet Fox, Andrew, Di, Christian Eriksdotter, Zaza Lord, Tyler Wild, Alan Bigwood, Millie Slater, Troved, Bob Rodeau, KJ, Josh Reborn, Rebecca Rodriguez, Kingslayer, Jed, Mihaitsa, Owen T, Tommy666, Gremlin Absolute, James Wright, Billy Bad Cables, Deep Winter, TXC0, Ulas Can Septicy, Evil Trunk Monkey, Ashley Taylor, Jack Centrone, I'm Tired, Fabian Schultz, Robert Escobar, Panda Panda, Maximilian Seeger, Tammy Gorterman, Gabrielle Rieterer, Ishbu, Jordan Parker, and Feisty Squirrel. Now moving over to this week's new Patreon signups, a big thank you and a massive shout out to Lord Mirak, John Melia, Emma M, Mario Georgie, United Provinces, Arshu, Brody Stewart, Connor Day, Tim C, Dejon Simmons, Six Can Cooler, Janny Brooks, Janae, Frederick Holm, Jack Schwinkendorf, Natalie Mayoral, Het Donker, Brendan, Barley ZF Baby, I Am Beanhead, Leo James, Nina Nons, Claire Athen, Bubs, Simon Raicher, Aisha Woods, Robbie Bird, Zero Lord, Daniel Christensen, Corey Wilkes, Ben, Lynx Cool, Josh Harper, Ernie Gonzalez, Jonathan Estelit, Jaden Saber, Megan, J2O, Dylan Adams, Ethan Williams, Houston Lee, Justin Stetler, Super 6B, Louis Sophia, Banana Scott, That Kid, Evan Swenson, Sonny, Anthony McGuigan, Fandom Fanatic, Elliot Lehman, Alec Lind, Jake, James Joe Patrick McMuller, Vivian Mahaffey, Trent, CJ Tebbs, Maximilian Seeger, Dominic Solis, Sage, It's Izzy, Landon Hartley, Luca Osthius, Caden, Forst, Anthony Poole, and Tony Solbrig. So once again, a massive shout out to all of the YouTube members and patrons, and a big thank you to everyone else for watching.